Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Koop-Lichty, and I'm Director of Alumni Engagement, and I'm also the International Student Advisor here at Goshen College. I want to welcome you to tonight's GC Talk. The GC Talks are a year-long set of presentations that will feature many of our annual lectureships and will additionally include presentations from GC faculty members, students, alumni, and friends of the college. The series will be sponsored by the GC Alumni Council. I want to start by sharing a brief welcome from Javier Hernandez, the Alumni Council Chair, who recorded this from his Chicago apartment where he's working these days.
Hi, good evening. My name is Javier Hernandez, Chair of the Goshen College Alumni Council. The Council is pleased to be hosting a series of presentations this academic year called the GC Talks. We hope you enjoyed tonight's talk, and we warmly welcome you to join us for future ones. To learn more or to view previous talks, you can go to goshen.edu/GC Talks. Thank you.
This evening, we are joined by Glenn Gilbert. Glenn recently retired from Goshen College after 35 years of important and diverse work. Glenn first arrived at GC in 1985 and worked as an electronics technician. On the side, he was also the chief engineer for WGCS, our radio station. He transitioned to a computer maintenance role before moving to the physical plant as utilities manager in 1990 and sustainability coordinator in 2007. He took over the role as director of facilities in 2017. Glenn is truly a Renaissance man. On top of his work with facilities, he has led initiatives for justice in many aspects of the college's life. He was on the first GC anti-racism team in 1996, and around the same time, he was faculty advisor for the LGBTQ Support Club, now known as PRISM. In 2007, then President James Brenneman asked Glenn to spearhead the college's efforts to reduce the carbon emissions of the college. This work is what he will be talking about tonight. In addition to his facilities work, he has co-taught the course Identity, Culture, and Community that all first-year students take, and he has helped lead GC's important Inside Out course that brings GC students and inmates in our county jail together to learn from one another. In addition to this work, he has generously given of his time to off-campus efforts to improve our community. I will now welcome Glenn to share with you. At the end of the presentation, there will be a chance for him to respond to your comments and questions. If you're joining us via Zoom webinar, you can interact with us through the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I will monitor those questions and comments, and we will get to as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation. Thank you, and welcome, Glenn.
Thank you, Dan. Are you able to hear me? Okay, good. I am glad to be here tonight. It's a privilege to share some of my experiences that I've been fortunate to have while working at Goshen College. My presentation is going to be based on a presentation that I've been giving every year for the last number of years in the Learning Communities core class, which is one of the classes that's taught to all incoming students, where we talk about sustainability and we talk about the environment in a variety of ways. This one will be a little bit different, but I want to show you one of my props that I bring into every class. As you see here, I have a bucket of coal. And I will take this and rather unceremoniously dump it on the stage in front of the students, which usually wakes them up. And then I invite them to come and pick up a piece of coal, because students today have, even though everybody knows what coal is, have most likely never felt, let alone felt the warmth of burning coal, but have never actually picked up a piece of coal and felt and seen how dirty their fingers get and passed it around. And it's such an important part of our energy history that it's good to start out talking about coal. So tonight, I thought I would expand a little bit of the presentation and talk about Goshen College's encounter with energy over its life. And so we'll start at the beginning, which is back when the administration building was built. It was built in 1903. There's several interesting things to see about the building. We're looking at the west side of the building. And back here is one of the original dormitories.
Glenn, I don't think you shared your screen, maybe.
I haven't shared it yet. Thank you.
Yep.
I knew there'd be something. Let me get back here and we will start sharing it. Share. How is that?
You got it.
Okay, thank you for waking me up. This is a picture of the administration building built back in 1903. Well, there's several interesting things about this building, but back here in the back is the dormitory that was then known as East Hall. You'll notice that this building was a building of everything, and it was the academic faculty offices, the administration offices, classrooms were held in here. Many of you will probably remember the old assembly hall, which is located in this area on the second and third floor. This is a little known secret that when the building was first started to be constructed, they intended there for it to be a grand staircase going up into the first floor, which is now into the executive office suite, facing Main Street. Somewhere along the point of construction, they decided to move the entrance over to the north side, and this never got finished, but you can still see today in the stonework that was the intention, and this picture shows clearly that they had a different idea of what to do with that space. But one of the things that was located in this building down in this corner was the heating plant, because you had to have a heating plant. And back then, the energy source of choice, of course, was coal. And so this chimney, which still remains on the building, would have been the chimney for the boiler, which was located down in the area near where the registrar's office used to be, and has now since been built over and has had many renovations since then. In 1915, the science building was built, and this is one of the construction pictures from that era. This was a huge addition to the physical facilities of the college, and as a result, they needed to have another source of heat because the boilers were just not built to handle this additional capacity. So they added a second boiler. This was the original boiler down in the basement of the administration building, and they built a second one, a nice new shiny one, in 1915. The gentleman standing there with his white shirt and bow tie is my predecessor. He would have been the director of facilities back then, Sam Plank. And while I'm not sure he always wore a white shirt when he was shoveling coal into the boiler, he clearly looked like he was at home in that facility. There's another picture of Sam outside working the lawnmower at the time in front of Culp Hall. Very different time for the use of energy than we're familiar with today. But he was well loved and important part of the history. As many of you know, the Goshen College continued to expand after the science building. This picture was taken in 1925 from the top of an electrical tower that was being built by Indiana and Michigan Power at the time. And you could see it looking north at the campus. Across now, which would have the Union Building and Newcomer Center, would be directly below this tower. This tower was just eliminated this year and replaced with a whole new electrical system. So that tower had been in place for close to a century, and this would have been the beginning of it. And it does show a very interesting perspective on the campus. The other thing you'll notice in the corner of this picture is the depot for the Interurban Railroad, which would come up Main Street, cut across in front of the Administration and Science Building, and then continued on to the south. This would have been the college depot for the Interurban Railroad. Another picture of the college that was taken probably in the early 30s. You can see that there's another smokestack in addition to the chimney right there. There's a second smokestack that would have accommodated that second boiler that we talked about. Kaufman Hall had been built by now, and this is, of course, Culp Hall. This was a difficult time for heating this campus, because even though they had 2 steam boilers, they had built way too many square foot of buildings to possibly keep it all heated in the cold of winter. And so what they had to do is they had to take turns, and the science building would get heat during a certain part of the day, and the administration building would get heat during a certain part, or certain portions of the building would get heat. And they would manually open and close valves and shovel coal in as much as they could. At night, oftentimes, those buildings wouldn't get any heat, and the residence halls would get some. But I've heard stories of alumni that have talked about snow on the windows in Culp Hall, not on the outside, but on the inside of the windows when it was bitter cold. And so it was always a struggle to come up with enough heat. And when they wanted to build more buildings, of course, the pressure continued. In 1945, here's the headline of the Goshen College newspaper, more heat for GC, and President Miller dedicates the new boiler that was installed in 1945. It definitely was a point of celebration. Here they were celebrating the removal of the old boilers that were torn out of the administration building, and in its place were built these brand new modern coal boilers in the building that's located at the place between Humble Center and the railroad tracks where the heating plant resides today. This is a picture of that completed coal building. It had a silo in the back for storing coal. One of the beauties was there was a side rail where the trains could come in and unload the coal. And so it was very convenient to have it here. And again, this is the depot for the interurban, which had been abandoned by this time, but was the physical plant building during this era. So there was still lots and lots of desire to add buildings, and Goshen College was growing rapidly. By this time, they were doing a capital campaign to raise money to build the union gymnasium and student union building. That would come online, and it would be heated from this modern coal plant. And so that was what happened next. This is a photograph that was, or a slide that was taken by John Humble back in the late 40s, I believe. East Hall that I mentioned in the first slide has now been moved across the street, across College Avenue, and it has become North Hall, where it resided until it burned down in the late 60s. But the interesting thing about this picture is the sky, because you'll notice that Goshen College wasn't the only one that built a smokestack. It was the way that all the commercial buildings and even the residential buildings and industries were each one had their coal smokestack. And you can see the gray, dark hue that lay over the entire town. And this is very typical of towns throughout the United States and probably throughout the world. Goshen College was no exception to that, and they made their contribution. Here's a picture taken from the new student union building, the snack shop, looking out across the campus. And you can see our modern coal-fired heating plant with its filthy smoke billowing out and contributing to the pollution that was rapidly accumulating everywhere you looked. This is a picture out of sequence, but this would have been a building of, again, the construction of that heating plant and the construction of that smokestack that you saw in the last picture. Since then, during the next 30 years, there wasn't a lot of construction that happened. In the 50s, the late 50s, there was the Fine Arts Building, which is now called Wise Hall, and the College Mennonite Church was built in late 59. Both of these buildings were heated from this heating plant. Newcomer Center was built in the 60s. And finally, in 1968, the modern library, that good library, was built. This building was remarkable from an energy perspective for two reasons. One, it was the first building to have central air conditioning in it. Massive air conditioners that were located in the basement of the library at the time. And the other distinction about the library in 1968, it was the first building on campus that bothered to use insulation. The idea that maybe it'd be a good idea to try to keep some of the heat in and the cold out through insulation in the wall. And so it wasn't until that late in the history of the college that insulation became an idea. The dormitories, Kratz and Miller, which were built also in the 60s, didn't have insulation in the walls, and they still don't today because there's not an opportunity to add it once the building is built. But here is a picture in 1994. We'd finally finished using coal. We had installed new boilers in the building that used oil to make steam, or more modernly, in more modern circumstances, finally natural gas was introduced in the 70s and used in the 80s. The last time we used coal in that heating plant was probably 1992, when we finally finished out using up the last of the coal supply and getting rid of the coal boiler. So this is the smokestack, which went up 50 years earlier that you saw in a previous picture. Coming down, it was starting to lean anyway, and it felt like it was a better idea to bring it down before it came down on its own. So finally, after 90 years, we were done with coal, finished the filthy, dirty coal that we all were tolerating over the years. We now had clean, modern gas, and we were done with coal altogether. However, that was just not the truth. We were using lots and lots of coal, but we were using it in the form of electricity. The coal plants were someplace, the electrical generating stations were located someplace other than Goshen, so we didn't think too much about it, but we were very dependent on coal. We would see train cars coming through campus from time to time. This was taken just a couple of years ago, where we'd see car after car loaded with coal off to someplace, but they weren't stopping in Goshen. And so even though we'd like to think that we were done with coal, we certainly weren't. We were very dependent on it. In Indiana, as recently as 2012, 13, 96% of our electricity was produced by coal. Coal has a long history in the United States, and we played our part in it. 250 years ago, when we first started using coal, the US recorded that they mined 50 tons of coal out of mines, perhaps similar to the one you see here. However, our thirst and appetite for energy grew, and now this is how we harvest coal. We literally chew mountains away. This would be a typical picture of a strip mine in mountaintop removal in West Virginia. If you were to Google Earth, West Virginia, and looked, it is a very, very verdant state with lots and lots of beautiful Appalachian forests, but it's pockmarked, and you can see it from the satellites with hundreds and hundreds of these types of scars that in our endless appetite for energy. We also use oil. Here's an early picture of oil. The irony of it is these oil rigs are located next to beautiful, clear, pristine streams. This is how we get oil now. This is the tar sands from Alberta, Canada. And again, our insatiable appetite for energy has given us, has caused us to scar our earth in so many ways. This picture from 10 years ago this year, the BP Horizon Deepwater oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. This is not a dystopia movie. This is actually the fire that was generated from that terrible incident that polluted a huge, huge portion of the Gulf of Mexico. So many of our ideas start out simple. Thomas Edison made a light bulb, and we were all intrigued with that. But in a very short time, 120 years, this is what it led to: was huge cities lit up beyond the wildest imagination of Thomas Edison, I'm sure. Henry Ford built an interesting vehicle that caught on, but I don't think he had any idea that this is the kind of overwhelming use we would apply, and the way that we would consume so many resources to be mobile. The early picture of the early flight, but now we have, prior to the pandemic anyway, anywhere over 30,000 people are in the air 24 hours a day, all the time, in planes using inordinate amounts of fossil fuels. And the results are pollution, global warming, polluted environments from the plastics that are made from fossil fuels. All of this leads us up to where we are today. In 2007, as Dan mentioned, President Jim Brenneman signed, along with many other university and college presidents the American College and University Climate Commitment. And this was a commitment to strive towards developing plans for bringing their institutions into carbon neutrality. And we joined in 2007, and it changed the paradigm for us. We've always been a campus that has had some interest in sustainability and our environment. Mary Lee has been a thriving part of our institution for many years, but this took it to another step in 2007 to be more intentional about how we use energy. We'll spend a little time on this slide here. Hopefully you can see the details of this. This is a slide that charts our electrical consumption on the green line that you see through here over a period of time, beginning back in 1991 and continuing on to the present. The red line that you see represents the number of square feet of building space that we have on campus over time. And we've done a lot of building additions since 1991. The first one would have been the science addition, the shrunk annex, and the total renovation of that building. In the mid 93, 94, we added a couple large additions to our footprint. We built the recreational fitness center at the College Mennonite Church, increased the size of their building significantly, and that was all done during this period. We sold High Park, so we actually dropped a few square footage. And then in 2001, Music Center was built. We built the connector. We built apartment buildings, and we're at where we are now in square footage, almost 750,000 square feet of building space, coming from about 360,000. It's about a 62% increase in the amount of square footage we built. Meanwhile, over time, this is our average use of electricity. And logically, as we added more square footage, the use of energy increased. We were able to make some reductions, and we were able to plateau things, but going from about 4,600,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, we got up here in the in 2004, 2005, and we were using 76 or 77 or 7,700 kilowatt hours a year, a radical increase in electricity. And then an interesting thing happened in 2004. We hadn't signed the climate commitment yet, but we were concerned about the increasing cost of energy. And then Hurricane Katrina hit. And some of you may recall that many of the gas production facilities were damaged and shut down, and the price of natural gas skyrocketed. And it went up 3 times what we'd been paying previously. And like many other institutions, that forced us to take a look at how we were using energy and motivated us to look carefully at where we could conserve. And by that time, we had already implemented building management systems where we had computers that were controlling our heating and cooling and supervising our spaces. And so we had a fair amount of automation built into it. But that's when we got aggressive about energy conservation. I went around to every department on campus and asked, when are your offices open? And what temperatures can you feel like you can live with? And I take that information and I built schedules for the different areas on the campus. We also looked at the campus calendar for classrooms. If a classroom wasn't going to be used for a couple hours, we stopped heating it or air conditioning it, as the case may be, and became much more aggressive about not heating or cooling spaces that were not being used. Almost immediately in this portion of the graph, our energy consumption dropped, and our gas consumption dropped also accordingly. And within the course of about two years, we were down to a place much lower than where we were. But you can see that downward curve has become part of our reality. We've incorporated a lot of energy conservation measures, most of them behind the scenes, controlling mechanical systems, pumps and fans, slowing them down, using them less, being smarter about making decisions with installing sensors to know when a space is occupied, and just a number of strategies like that has allowed us to continue to bring our energy usage down over the years. More recently, we've been installing lighting conversions. We moved from high energy incandescence, of course, to fluorescence over the years. And we continued down until the last couple of years, we have become more aggressive with LED conversions. Just this last 2 years, we've replaced over 12,000 4-foot fluorescent lamps, many of them just this summer, with LED lights. And of course, the payback on that is attractive, and we've been able to continue to do that. We have 2 lines that occur here. This is when we installed solar panels, which I'll show you a little bit later. That reduced our consumption of NIPSCO, our utility electricity, but we trend it both ways. This is the electricity we continue to use, but this is the actual amount that we have to purchase, and the difference is what we're being able to produce with our solar panels. So now we are using the same energy, or a little bit less actually, than we were using back in 1991 before all of these buildings were built. This is a picture of our solar installation on the roof of our heating plant. I've been asked for probably 15 years, why aren't you putting in solar panels? Why aren't you putting in solar panels? And I would say, every time I was asked that question, that I could, if we had enough money to install solar panels, if you could allow me to invest that money in conservation, I will reduce our carbon footprint, and we will not, and it is much better to not use energy than to build expensive electricity and then just waste it. So that has been our philosophy over the years, but in 2018, we partnered with the College Mennonite Church congregation located over here to purchase the solar panels. It made more sense to put them on the Rec Fitness Center because we had that large flat roof on the gymnasium. So in a financial partnership through our Amity Corporation, Goshen College and the College Mennonite Church installed this and share the benefits of this solar panel. There's about 923 solar panels there on that. In the meantime, we've created a real passion for sustainability and environmental concerns on our campus. The climate commitment was a big part of that. Mary Lee certainly has been a big part of that. But also our academics have embraced sustainability in exciting ways. And I'll just run through quickly some of the things that are now a standard part of our curriculum, a major part of our curriculum. We have a Master's in Arts and Environmental Education. We have a graduate semester in Sustainability Leadership, major in Environmental and Marine Science. We have a marine biology lab down in Layton, Florida that is an opportunity for us to teach about not only marine life, but how global warming is affecting our oceans. With sustainability management, both major and minor, sustainability studies major, sustainable food systems major, sustainable leadership semester, agroecology summer intensive, and we have an environmental, a minor in environmental studies. We have many, many classes that are, in addition to our major, part of our majors and minors. Roots of the Environmental Crisis is one that many incoming students take. Ecological economics and natural resources, ecology and evolution, advanced field ecology, environmental history, sustainability and regeneration, environmental problem solving, environmental health issues, faith, ethics, and eco-justice. All disciplines, many of the different disciplines on campus have embraced the environment and embraced sustainability on campus. And it has produced a large number of U alumni who have also taken up careers and developed a passion for sustainability that has spread out throughout the world and certainly in the community of Goshen. This picture right here I'm particularly pleased with. This is the Goshen Family Health System. They are medical providers for Goshen College. And on the right there you'll see Dr. Tim Toot, an alumni of Goshen College. He was quick to install solar panels on his facility 10 years ago, and these panels have been up there, and they're a landmark in the community, and you'll see some other alumni there you might recognize. Down the street from us, Bethany Christian School has embraced in sustainability in huge ways, in very admirable ways. They've installed about 1,300 solar panels on their buildings. You see a windmill in the back, and installed a large geothermal system. They have a remarkable facility, and they're making about 90% of their electricity. On campus, our students have pushed us and led us to develop a composting system. Every year, students like to go out into the rivers and do cleanup and improve their environment. Across the street from us is Trackside Community Garden. This is a garden that was developed by a Goshen College student and supported by members of the community. It continues today. It's modest, but it's also a great learning and a great gift to the community. On campus, we've moved a lot of our lawns from monoculture grass. About 10 acres of them we've taken offline and put into wildflowers and native landscaping. This is a picture of our beautiful music center in the peak of summer with our native grass. And so what's happened at Goshen College is something to celebrate, and it really is something to celebrate how it continues to spread as we educate and promote students that are believing in sustainability and improving our environment. So on this pretty picture, I'll end my conversation, my input. This again is another picture of our wildflowers right across the street from the physical plant building in the peak of summer. I'll turn it back to you, Dan. If there are any questions or any comments, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Sure, Glenn. First, thank you so much. You know, I've heard your presentation as I teach in that learning community class a number of times, and I also have had the pleasure of having a tour either from you or I forget if it was you or Steve at some point, Steve Shantz, and it's just, to me, this is such a point of pride for me as a Goshen College person, how it fits our values, and really this is such an amazing thing. The graph you have there about our ability to, through a lot of your hard work and others in the physical plant, to be able to reduce our energy consumption. I've learned a lot from you, including you know, talking about thinking about green energy options, but first working to reduce what you use, so you're not just sort of adding in a bunch of cheap, sustainable things without thinking first about how do you insulate better, how do you reduce your consumption, and I really appreciate that message from you as well. And I think, you know, you just touch on a lot of the things you've done. One of the things that you maybe can talk a little bit about this, but one of the things I thought was so cool is when you put new windows into Yoder dorm. Can you tell us what you did with that?
Well, I think they were actually the third set of windows. Windows at Yoder Hall are a story all by themselves. The first ones that were in were single pane. They didn't close well. I hear stories, and probably some of you alumni who might have been early occupants of Yoder Hall, the wind would blow through that building in the wintertime from one side to the other, and there would literally be snow swirls inside the building, even though we had steam heat in there. Those windows were terrible. We replaced them in the late 80s, but then again, we replaced them not too many years ago. And this time when we replaced them, we put a switch in the window. We want people to open the windows and bring in fresh air when it's appropriate. And we welcome that, but at the same time, we want them to be closed in the heating season or in the cooling season now that we air condition that building. And so we put a switch in there, and we've tied it to our building management system. And we know every time, well, the computer knows, every time a window is open. And if the window is open, we'll turn the heat off. Or in the summer, if the window is open, we turn the air conditioning off. We can do that with the computer, which is fine. If you're happy with the fresh air, open your window. But don't leave it open if you want to get heat in the wintertime, because we're not going to heat the room at the same time the window's open.
I mean, it's those and hundreds of other examples of little things that have made that graph go down that are so impressive. So I have a couple questions for you, kind of forward and backwards questions. So as you look back on your career, and we were talking before this, that truth is you're still giving of your time and energy to the college even now, even though you're retired from the college, which I think you remember talking to you before you retired, saying that will be the problem staying in Goshen, trying to disengage from the college. So we thank you for the things you continue to do and the ways you're helping. But as you look back on your career, what are the things that you're most proud of in relation to your sustainability efforts? Are there particular things, or is it just the overall thing? What are you really happy about?
Well, it pleases me to see the flowers growing and the grass growing. That's something that I've grown to appreciate. We talk about energy and we talk about electricity, but we don't necessarily talk about water and our soil in the ways that we should. And this not only is a great way to keep the rainwater and bring it back into the ground, but it's also a way to prevent the need to burn fossil fuels to make a flat, boring lawn. So I am very pleased that we were able to do this, and I do derive a lot of satisfaction from that. It's also satisfying for me to figure out another strategy for squeezing another little bit of carbon usage out of our systems. And hardly a day, certainly not a week, would go by when I would be in conversation with Steve Shantz, who is our assistant supervisor, and also somebody who's very passionate about the environment and saving energy. Hardly a week goes by where we don't come up with some sort of strategy in some building, in some system that we're using to make a change in our program and our points of information. And it's been an interesting challenge. It's also a great career going forward in the next years to come is the idea of training people up in sustainability. There's so many ways. If Goshen College can reduce its electrical consumption to the extent that we have, as our buildings demonstrate, we haven't built particularly unusual buildings. For the most part, they're very typical. And the energy that we've been able to save really is out there for other people to save too. And so training up and educating people on how to do that is an important thing, I think, for the future of this, for our environment.
Do the improvements you've made, like, do most of them pay for themselves over time, or is it really an investment?
It's a little of both, but mostly they have their own economic payback. Fortunately, if you save energy, you save money. Mm-hmm. And so it hasn't been difficult to persuade an administration who believe in the environment, but they also have tremendous economic pressures to keep the budget in line. And over the years, my entire career at Goshen College, that has always been the story. We've had to always watch our pennies and make sure that we are using them as frugally as possible. So it's been great that saving energy and saving money have correlated. Sometimes the payback has not been as quick as other times. And I've been pleased that the administration has seen the value in reducing energy just for the sake of the environment. But for the most part, it's satisfying to reduce the dollars spent as well as the amount of energy used.
Remind me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that at some point we did make a commitment to purchasing green energy entirely. Is that, or green electricity entirely? Is that right?
We purchase the electricity that we do purchase. We have the option to purchase through a system called renewable energy credits to purchase our electricity from green sources, in this case, wind energy, which is not produced in our particular neighborhood, but is somewhere out, mostly out west or maybe in central Indiana, where wind is much more prevalent. We're able to purchase renewable energy credits that allow us to claim that our energy is produced from green sources, and that the money that we invest in that is used to promote the development of green energy. Truthfully, our electric wires are still hooked to coal-fired plants, and so we're part of a system, but we do contribute money to through the renewable energy credit system that allows us to claim that we are purchasing green energy.
And you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we're going to end with this question. So what do you look for? What kind of, I mean, it could be these conversations you and Steve have, what kind of things are you thinking about are next steps? What would you love to do now if you could? Or what do you imagine the future might look like in sustainability for Goshen College?
Well, we do need to continue to improve our building envelopes. This summer we did replace a lot of roofs. We did add insulation on the roofs. We've been pretty good, pretty successful at replacing windows, but we still have many uninsulated walls, not because we can't afford to, but because it's very, very difficult physically to do that. So I hope we continue to find ways to do that. We are heating more of our buildings using geothermal, which is taking BTUs from the ground through groundwater and either taking heat out of the ground or putting heat into the ground, depending on whether we're heating or cooling. I hope we are able to continue to do more of that. I think we can continue to use our energy smarter. We've done a lot with lighting retrofits, as I mentioned, in the last couple of years. We're not done with that yet, but we're probably 90% done with replacing our fluorescent lights, but there's even more energy conservation through harvesting sunlight. There's a lot of possibilities yet. They're getting, the fruit's a little higher in the tree than it used to be, but there's still plenty of opportunities. I think what our most valuable energy contribution is not through our saving more electricity, but continuing to bring up our students to an increased awareness of the environment and sustainability, because what we produce, our product, and bright, educated, passionate students that have a goal for taking leadership in sustainability throughout the world will have a far bigger imprint and impact than anything we do in our little tiny sphere called Goshen College.
Glenn, thank you so much. I admire you, and I admire the work you've done and the work you continue to do both on campus and the community. And I do hope that other places can learn from us, and that we continue to learn ourselves and as you said, teach students to sort of be the next generation of conservationists and living and teaching others about sustainable life. Thanks again. For those of you out there, we encourage you to continue to keep watching these GC talks. They will be recorded, and you can see those on goshen.edu/GC talks, or you can see future links for future events as well. Again, Glenn, thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you.